We want to make sure that that recovery is the most inclusive and sustainable that we can get it to be.
Hello, I'm Natalie Kenway, editor of ESG Clarity, and welcome to this exclusive video interview. We can reveal Alquity is launching its first global impact fund, investing in companies around the world with a positive sustainability, societal and environmental impact. Joining me with all the details is Fund Manager and Global Head of Quantitative Strategies, Marnie Arungan-Oy. Thank you so much for joining me, Marnie.
Thank you, Natalie. We're very excited to be here, and thank you for having us on your program.
Great. Well, first of all, can you explain the rationale behind launching the Global Equities Impact Fund? What are its aims?
So I think it's been a year now that we've had this COVID pandemic. And if people do remember, it's been 5 years since the United Nations set the Sustainable Development Agenda. And what we've found, and as everybody has discovered, is that this COVID pandemic has really threatened the progress that we've made towards those SDGs. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected all of us to varying degrees. But we can't forget that what it's done has really affected the most vulnerable in our society. And now, a year into this pandemic, we're at a point where we can think about recovery. And we want to make sure that that recovery is the most inclusive and sustainable that we can get it to be. So we're very excited about this Global Impact Fund, because what it does is it empowers us as investors to participate in that recovery. And we have a wealth of experience and expertise at Alquity in ESG and impact and emerging markets investing. We want to build on that experience as we make our first investing into global equities. I think what will differentiate the Global Impact Fund from all other global equities fund out there and the emerging markets vehicle that we have is that we know that there's been a lot of investments in ESG and impact data. So we want to just harness the power of that ESG and impact data. We want to ensure that every company that we look at has robust ESG and impact metrics. And as a quant fund, we just don't want to highlight how far better we may be in ESG and impact metrics. But I think the one challenge of ESG investing is that there is a question of how do we keep up with the market risk exposures? And that is one thing that I think differentiates the fund, is being able to deliver on those ESG and impact metrics that we've set, but also to ensure that the fund that we have has well-constructed market risk exposures. So at the end of the day, that really is the aim of the fund. We want to deliver against a very high quality ESG credentials that we've set for ourselves. We want to deliver on the progress towards those UN SDGs, because as I've highlighted, it's very important for us as investors to participate in that recovery. But we also want to make sure that we deliver financial performance. And the best way to do that is really through a quantitative approach that balances perhaps those competing objectives into a fund that can deliver on those goals.
Great. Okay. And you've explained that it's a quant fund. So can you talk a bit about the investment process, maybe some of the screens that you use?
So the foundation of what we do in quant investing is obviously we have to understand what companies will be invested in. And so the first thing that we do is we have to exclude sectors that we feel don't contribute to the sustainability theme that we have in our portfolio. And that includes sectors such as fossil fuels, pornography, armaments, alcohol. But what we want to focus on is we want to focus on companies within the developed and emerging markets that are the cream of the ESG crop, because we believe that high quality ESG delivers high quality returns and sustainability. But we go a further step. We want to prioritize companies that are sustainability leaders. And what we mean by that is that we want to look at the revenues and prioritize those companies that have at least 50% of their revenues towards the progress of the SDGs. So that basically is the foundation of how we're going to do quant investing. But the power of quant investing really is in the second step, and that's in the portfolio construction and risk management, right? So being very data driven, each company that we look at will have robust ESG and impact metrics, a wealth of them, not just one or two, but multiple metrics. What we also want to do is with each company, be able to quantify the risk profile relative to the broad market. And on top of that, our expertise on macro investing and equity factor investing will help enhance that process. So with those elements, so you've got this pot of ingredients, what we want to do is then shape that with robust portfolio construction and risk management. And out of that will come out probably about 75 to 125 companies that really pass our impact and ESG metrics and also achieve the targeted risk profile that we want to have. So at the end of the day, this will help us achieve the goals of the Global Impact Fund, which, as I've said, is really all about making sure that we have well-constructed market risk exposures and far better ESG and impact metrics than what is offered out there, right? So, what the third step of this is, once we've got that portfolio, we've built a very robust monitoring framework that we can pinpoint exactly how the risk profiles of our holdings are changing relative to the market, and how those ESG and impact metrics are also evolving, and ensure that through that management process, we are targeting the profiles that we are trying to achieve. So at the end of the day, you basically have a portfolio with really, really good SDG progress metrics that we can demonstrate. And that clearly aligns with the equity strategy of developing that bridge between listed equities and impact.
Okay, great. And I understand the portfolio consists of 100 to 125 names. How do you engage with these companies?
So with engagement, we want to make sure that what we do has meaningful outcomes. And we've thought a lot about this, and how we intend to deliver engagement is really primarily through two ways. One is through direct engagement. As I've said, we have a lot of data for our companies in terms of ESG and impact. So we can pinpoint exactly the points of engagement that we want to have with the companies. But beyond that, what we want to do is work with companies that have SDG related products and help them become the cream of the ESG crop by really increasing their ESG credentials, which in turn will help them become sustainable businesses. We have a long track record of doing this within our emerging markets team. And what we want to do is leverage that expertise and be able to engage with the companies on a meaningful term to deliver the outcome that I've spoken about. The second way that we want to engage with is that we realize that we need to belong to a tribe that delivers on engagement initiatives. And so what do I mean by that? I think partnership, we believe that partnership with industry thought leaders is really, really important to take us to the next level of ESG and impact. And we want to partner with those thought leaders to set and drive their engagement priorities. So one example of that is that we are members of the FAIR Initiative, which for people who are not familiar with that, they research and lobby leading companies in the meat and dairy industry. And what they really focus on is to help those companies mitigate their GHG emissions and improve their emissions reporting. So among all other initiatives that they have, which is also the use of antibiotics in that industry. But I think what we want to demonstrate is that zeroing in on engagement priorities using data is going to be key as to how we're going to drive engagement. But also, we have this unique ability through our expertise to really engage with companies on the ground. And the combination of those two is quite powerful.
Fantastic. And how will you ensure the names the fund invests in are aligned to the UN SDGs?
That's a really good question. And I think from the conversation that we have, we can all see that it's going to be quite data driven. Firstly, we know that high ESG quality translates to high sustainability and hence significant progress towards SDG. So we want to ensure that the companies that we invest in have consistent ESG metrics that they're available for us to look at, and they must score highly along all the metrics that we've set for them. But more importantly, when we think about the progress towards UN SDGs, you definitely would want to allocate capital to those companies that generate most of their revenues towards SDGs. So we've got a framework where we can quantify where the revenues of these companies are coming from and how we can in turn map them towards the SDGs that we want to target in our fund. And what are those SDGs that we want to target in our fund? We're mainly focusing on SDGs 3, 4, 6, 10, 12, and 13. And those are just numbers, but what they really focus on are the move towards decarbonization in our planet, being able to promote gender equality in our world, as well as to guarantee health outcomes for the most vulnerable in our planet. And being able to zero in on those companies where a significant portion of the revenues is towards those goals is, I think, the surest way for us to ascertain progress towards them.
How do you see the impact investment landscape evolving over the next few years?
So as a firm, we really think at Alquity, and we've known this for a while now, that ESG and impact investing will converge and we'll start reinforcing each other. And we're seeing really that movement happening in the past year. But I think what will differentiate also is that the investment that we have in data will demand from our investors that we put our money where we say it is, which is how do we prove that we're actually achieving those goals? And the only way to do that is really to be data driven and to be able to look at all the unstructured data that is available out there and be able to make sense out of it and report back to ourselves and to our investors how we truly are affecting the world. So that's one way that we think about the evolution. But I think more importantly, we at Alquity think that all investing, not just impact investing, will be about doing well, is doing good. So we won't just be judged on financial performance, and we won't just be judged by ESG credentials, but we'll also be judged by how we actually contribute to society and the environment. And our investors will demand that. I think that at Alquity, we've been at the forefront of that evolution because we've been subscribing to our virtuous circle business model, which is really doing what we've said. We're investing. We want to make sure we invest in high ESG quality companies, but we want to turn the lens on ourselves. And as good corporate citizens, as citizens of the world, as mothers, fathers, friends, sisters, brothers, we play a part in what we do at work. Essentially must be giving back to the societies that we live in. And that, I think, is going to be really where we see investing come to. Not just ESG, not just impact, but ultimately all investing.
Yes, I completely agree. We're seeing that on our side as well, the worlds of ESG and impact investing converging, and also investors demanding more and not just focus on financial performance, the sort of sense of doing the right thing. Well, thank you very much for sharing that all with us. We wish you the very best with the fund.
Thank you, Natalie. We're really, really excited about this fund, and we have very big plans for it. We're looking forward to having more conversations with you and with our investors, and we're really looking forward to the recovery that will happen after this pandemic. So thank you.